cool thing about this is we have a chance to hear from some of our key team who have been here for 10, 20, 30 years, decades, which is amazing, and hear from them about some of the key cultural values that are so intrinsic within our team. So if you're brand new, this is a godsend. This is a chance for you to catch up on 30 years of Hillsong Church and Hillsong Creative culture in a single night. You're welcome. And if you've been here for that long, isn't it awesome that we get to take time to remember this stuff and make sure that it's still close to our heart, which is really cool. Anything you want to add to that before we start asking questions?
I thought that was great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Pressure. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a speed round. And my question is, what is the first thing as part of this church that you did on the platform? Or maybe what the first way that you served? Starting here, JD, first thing you did.
First thing was putting out chairs for a leaders meeting at youth.
Awesome.
Served in the mother's room for sisterhood.
I played drums and then was asked never to play drums again.
And that still stands.
I need to borrow budget cuts. I need to borrow your microphone, Gabe. I think I was in the choir, straight up.
The choir.
Yeah, choir.
You, Annie?
I was in the choir also.
Good job.
Gabrielle?
I was asked to play drums the first time, and then halfway through the service, the worship leader from Keys turned around and yelled his encouragement at me 3 times, and the third time he actually stopped playing and turned around and said, "I said stop the rhythm!" I didn't play for 3 years. I mean, I feel great now.
I'm really sorry that I did that to you.
Well played.
Mush?
I washed the yellow squishy foams that go into your in-ears. Yeah.
That was you!
That was me, guys.
You washed
Pastor Rich?
Yeah. We reused them. Hey,
it's a long story, Rich.
Come a long way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pastor Rich?
First thing on the platform, we used to have a mascot for the kids ministry. And I remember when we first got the new mascot, I had the opportunity of being the character, Cad, once.
Cad.
I felt Cad.
Was it an animal? Was it a, what?
I believe it was
dog.
a dog, maybe?
Cad.
Kids alive dog. Kids alive dog.
Right.
Thank you very much. I was the kids alive dog once, yes.
Wow, that sounds like a horror movie waiting to happen. Cass?
I thought I did a great job, but...
I like to twist it. I feel like my first platform was cooking chips at Jam Conference.
Very good.
Thank you. Because everything's a platform, Gabe.
It's true.
Oh, write that down.
Head of the class, that is why
can
she's
clap
the
for
boss. Annie, do you have any more questions you want to ask people?
This is probably mainly for my personal enjoyment. Many of you have probably heard this, but let's hear it again. JD, do you have any embarrassing moments that you might want to share with us before we just dive in right to the deep stuff?
Yeah, which one do you want to
Just top 3.
I feel like every second went, well, maybe I stage dived once and people must have thought I was Moses because the people parted and I just hit the ground. One time I got excited and jumped off the drum kit and our youth pastor was running around on stage and I landed straight on top of him and broke both bones in his leg. And then probably the most embarrassing moment of all time for me was when I was jumping around on stage and I ripped my pants like completely. You may have heard the story, but it was so embarrassing. I went off the stage and Webby, who's in the front row here, gaff taped up my jeans, only for it to come undone and the whole crowd, like 5,000 people, laugh in my face. I run down again. Webby gets another bright idea. He runs into the crowd, finds a complete stranger who was, this guy just was, he had a massive heart. Like he was a big-hearted guy. And I went from wearing tight black jeans to the baggiest bright blue jeans you've ever seen. He came back, swapped jeans with me, and the funny side of it, he spent like an hour and a half in our green room in his undies while we did the worship night. And that was probably the most embarrassing moment of my life.
The best part about that was JD walked back on with the gaff-taped pants, and because
it was the fake gaff, so it was shiny.
Fake gaff, and also because his jeans were sweaty, it didn't stick. So basically, he walked on, his pants, the gaff fell off, and then there was a bit of giggling. It was right in a real quiet moment, And then Brooke, it's a real quiet moment, Brooke's like leading, and then she just looks over and goes, and JD literally does this.
Never forget.
So now I just rip my own jeans so it doesn't happen.
Let's take it to a slightly more serious place. I mean, anywhere's a slightly more serious place than that. I'd just like to hear a little bit from you guys about when you first kind of discovered your heart for creativity, for worship, when you first realized that it was something God had put in your life, something that you felt called to do, something you felt purpose to do, whether it was at home or in early days in your church or anything like that. Orts, do you want to speak to that?
Can JD go first?
I think JD's already talked about his greatest moments.
I was still thinking.
While
about
you're
when.
thinking, is it true you grew up in a commune?
There we go.
Ask the audience. What do you think? Yes, I did. Yes. I grew up in a hippie commune in the middle of Alaska.
I love that so much. And they ate dinner together every night and did school together. And it was an incredible foundation, actually, in your faith, right?
Yes, it was. What was the... Yeah, it was awesome.
Annie wants to just talk about you as well for a second.
Sorry, just one more fun fact. Please put your hand up if there was a medical emergency and people on the stage, and you would know what to do.
Oh, yes, good.
Put your hand up if you would know what to do.
I also used to be a paramedic.
Okay, see, that's pretty cool.
That's all.
I actually love that. I love that fact. You used to be a paramedic.
Now I wouldn't know what to do. Now I'd be hopeless. Please don't come to me. If you
I heard it's like riding a bike, so I'm happy to get hurt anytime you're around.
If you want to, no.
Take Jet out now.
Yeah. The question, Autumn, was when you first kind of felt your heart for creativity, worship, when you first kind of felt it come to life within you.
I don't know. I used to play the piano a lot. Well, I still do. But I would find, I don't actually know that I felt called to worship or ministry. I was a pastor's kid, and my grandparents and my parents were pastors. So to be honest, I didn't really want much to do with church or church life. That's why I went to paramedic school. But I remember that every time I would play the piano or any time I would play an instrument, I felt so close to God. And I think when I was a teenager and I'd have a fight with my mom or my dad, they'd send me off to the piano. And I'd go and I'd play for hours. And I think that became my safe space. And through that, I ended up actually just loving worship. And yeah, I think that was a start for me.
Did you realize that at the time, or was it kind of afterwards that it kind of clicked for you?
Probably afterwards.
It's funny how that happens. Jadwin?
I grew up, my mum got saved when I was 10, so we started going along to this church. It was an exciting Pentecostal church in the 90s. Whoa. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Look out.
And,
Flags?
Oh, yeah, dancing, all of it.
Flags and banners, or just flags?
Yep, all of it, man.
Hey,
Think just let it run wild in your head. That's what happened. But we had like a youth connect group, and I played guitar. So that somehow it was like, hey, can you come and play guitar for the connect group? And I did for a while, and then they said, hey, can you just start the song off? Because we need to know when to start singing. And I was like, okay. But it was a trick, right? Because and then they started calling me the worship leader, and I was like, nah, I just start the song off. Like, I start the song off. But I started to do it, and it started to be like less weird. And then I felt like, because I was a shy kid, but I remember one time at a connect group, and people were praying for other people, and it was like I felt the presence of God. And then I remember God. I felt like God said to me, "This is what I want you to do. I want you to help people find where I am." And I remember that as clear as day. And it's kind of now. I mean, that's kind of why I'm still doing it, I guess. Yeah.
I'll ask you, Dave. Can you talk a little bit about why it is that you do what you do, why you serve, and if you have gone through seasons where maybe you had to lay some of that down, and what that looked like? Like you even talked about it tonight, like you love what you do and you're a worship leader and a pastor on our team. What is it that keeps you wanting to do that? And what did it look like maybe when you've had seasons where that opportunity wasn't there?
Yeah, I grew up loving DC talk.
Jesus freaks.
Wait, you didn't let me finish. Loving DC talk in front of my parents, but then like Tupac behind the closed doors. There's the real ones. There's the real ones.
I don't even know who that is.
I grew up loving hip hop music, so I loved hip hop music. And even when I became a Christian when I was 17, I was serving in church as a drummer or whatever, but still continued to like record and to produce and stuff like that. And I remember our church became a Hillsong extension service, and I was like, Hillsong's so big and so vast, and they're not going to need me to play drums or sing or anything like that, so I'm just going to focus on hip hop. And then I felt God. I was at down the front. I think we call it the altar, depending how Pentecostal you feel.
In Jad's old church, they definitely did.
Yeah, definitely Chad's old church, we call it that. And I just felt this sense of like, I'm actually going to ask you to lay that down. And it's just like God to flip it on its head and go, you think you're born for this, but you're actually made for this. And I'm so glad I made that decision, because I look at where I am at now, and I just decided to put aside like the safety of what I loved and what I knew, and just went for the God adventure. And like God surprised me so much by what I get to be a part of. Even the small things that I get to do, be a part of with this team is so much more than I could have ever imagined. Yeah.
Easy to do, hard to do.
Super hard. So I still, even now, have a crack at the hip hop thing. And then God somehow just realigns me and goes, yeah, that's cool. I like that. That can be a hobby, but you're meant to lead people into my presence. And that's what you're going to be doing for a long time. So good. Yeah.
That's great, man.
How do you find that conviction, Dave? Like, people in the room, people at home, like, how do you know what God's calling you to? And how do you know when to lay something down and when to keep hold of it?
I think looking back, the impact I would have had as a very fresh Christian 17-year-old trying to achieve something like hip-hop in the secular realm, and then going, I'm just going to focus on Jesus for the season and lay that aside. You look at the impact that it's had on people, not like the crowds, but the people in my life. Like I met Ms., my wife, at that time, and I was just a fresh Christian, and I was 20 years old. We weren't even dating yet. And I think about, what if I had chosen the other path? And I think because you can kind of see ahead and go, okay, look, what's on God's heart? God's heart is to reach people and to love people. Who is he going to use? He's probably going to use me. He's probably going to use you. And so what pathway and what gift do I have in my hands to be able to execute that? And for me, it was like music and leading worship.
Okay, so then Mush, you've got music in your hand, DJing, rap, and vocals. But you end up picking up creative technology and production. Why?
I think I was going to say, and you asked the question about how do you know. I'm not, in some instances, I'm not convinced you actually would know. I feel like I've learned to trust the fact that God's ability to get me where he wants me to go is greater than my ability to derail myself. And I think we tend to place value on, emphasis on the fact that I may miss this, I could miss this. What is God saying? Am I doing what he wants me to do? I could miss this. Whereas the reality is God wants us to get to where we want to go more than we want to get there. So his ability to get us there is way greater than our ability to kind of go sideways. So I think the next step, it's about taking the next step and what you have in your hand. For me, I had music at a time in my hand. I had whatever. There's a few things I've had along the way, but at every point in time, I felt like I'll give that all I have, and when it's time to do the next thing, I'll do the next thing. And in all honesty, I couldn't have written this script if you asked me to 10 years ago. But I love it probably more than anything I could ever have written. So I don't know. Not sure there's as much a concrete, orchestrated plan as much as a trust for the next step and trust the next step and trust the next step.
Rich, do you want to say anything to that?
I guess I was just thinking about my journey in that kind of way, and at some point along the line in the last few years, God reminded me about, I guess, in Ephesians, how he talks about how he can do exceedingly above anything we can ask or think or even imagine. And when it comes to our dreams or my dreams for my life, I felt like I had to go, oh, God, I can dream pretty big, and I love dreaming, but I feel like I have to almost lay that aside in lieu of what you're dreaming for my life. Because as your journey, particularly, I guess, serving God in church and trying to serve in a big church where sometimes you have opportunity, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes your dreams don't come to pass like you think they're going to. And so I've had to trust that even though I might dream big for myself, I feel like God is dreaming even bigger. And therefore, if I trust him with the dreams, then like you say, he'll allow his dreams to come to pass. And those, I've discovered, those are even better than what I thought they would be. Different, but better.
I live with you. So how easy was that process?
Loaded question.
I live with you. And no. I mean, hard, actually. Really hard. Probably the toughest thing ever. And I think you can, I guess if we're talking about the journey of, life, I feel like life is really long. And I'm only discovering that as it unfolds. But the seasons when, we've been a part of Hillsong Church probably 20 or so years. And I thought when we came to Sydney that I would be the next big thing. And I arrived and was nothing, insignificant in it all, and had to realign my thinking around who I am and where I fit and what I'm called to do and everything, because one by one my dreams weren't coming to pass. And so eventually you have to sort of open your eyes to maybe God's doing something different. Maybe he's just wanting me to serve and be willing to do whatever he puts in your hand to do. And it's in that then you start to maybe realign, get on track with what God's wanting to do. And I think it just probably took me a long time to realize, you've got a plan. I don't have to come up with the plan. And you'll outwork that in your good time. Yeah.
Can I say, I feel like we can often be, people can often kind of fall into the trap of looking for specifics from God. And knowing, this if this works out, that could actually be perfect. God, are you listening? Are you taking notes? And then we're like, God, what's your plan? What do you want from me? And I feel like the revelation I got was God was like, I want you to use what I gave you to build my church. Now that's it could be anywhere, right?
Right.
But the crazy thing is, and Pastor Brian talks about it all the time. Just what's in your hand. Use what God gave you, and build and grow what's in your hand, and be faithful with what's in your hand. I believe that when we're looking for specifics, God's just looking for us to connect our purpose and our giftings to something bigger than ourselves, and then all of a sudden we start to find fulfillment and purpose in that.
Which I think is pretty interesting as part of a team, because it's really easy to see that what's in your hand finds its fulfillment maybe here on a Sunday or in our teams on a Sunday. But I believe that the kingdom of God is so much bigger than just Sunday. And so maybe that actually helps a lot of us going, what God's put in my hand often can find expression during the week in an ad agency, or like I think of Erin Crosariel, who's a hairdresser. She's one of the most creative people in the world. And what she's got in her hand Monday to Friday is of the same value as what you do on a Sunday morning on the platform. I think sometimes it's real easy to delineate between kingdom work and corporate or secular work. And I'm not sure that God makes those distinctions. I think for him it's all kingdom work, and we've got to find out what he wants for us to do and then find our place in that.
Yeah. Do you think what's in your hand may be leading a creative team, but also school community? Like that's in your hand as well.
Yeah.
It's in my hand. People might have a job somewhere. That's also in your hand. Those people that you're working with, that's just as important as this thing that we often put so far above everything else.
My dad often scares me because he goes, the only thing without a shadow of a doubt the Lord gave you is your children. You can marry the wrong man. You can find yourself in the wrong job. You can find yourself... Are you pulling faces at me? Okay. But you can find yourself in all the places that maybe you shouldn't be, but when you have children, they're your God-given responsibility. And so you better make sure you steward those people and those lives well. And I feel like that esteems the school community and the children and the dance ministry, like all the things that you find yourself involved in as a result of that, and kind of broadens your view to the kingdom of God's about people, not just task. And we so want to offer what we have to God that often we think the task matters to him more than the relationships. I don't know.
And what you touch on there as well is that we've been given so many different spheres of creativity and so many different tools to use. God might have given you a gift to sing, but he's also given you a gift to encourage and a gift to prophesy, whatever else. And it's easy for us to see one of a platform gifting as being higher or lower than another, and we can start to prioritize what we have, what we think we want to have. Jade, I'm interested to hear from you on this, being a dude who is gifted across a bunch of areas. Like 2. Don't get ahead of yourself. But people would look at you and see you as a worship leader and absolutely killing it. But there's other things that are on your heart, even ministry-wise. There are other things that you feel like God's called you to do. How do you balance what you've been given and what you're waiting for? Like, what do you do in that waiting?
Read the Bible. I think it's cliche in the Sunday school answer, but through this conversation, I think we can all relate to the fact that we all have dreams in our hearts, and that's incredible, but it doesn't always pan out the way that we would want. And that seems to take us out or make us discouraged, but I don't know where in the Bible Jesus instructs us to try and get what we want. And I love this, there's a scripture, I think it's in Hebrews, and the Message translation kind of talks about if you're failing in your faith or tired or weary, go back over the story of Jesus line by line, and it literally the Message says it'll shoot adrenaline into your veins. And I know for me that when I find myself kind of either wearing my faith or just getting distracted, I'm just maybe picking up attitudes or getting frustrated at not being where I want to be. And I think the moment all I have to do is actually go back to the story of Jesus and what this is actually about, and kind of the greatest thing I can do, and I think that we all can do, is realize, like Rich said, it is a long game. And what is the actual goal of life? Is it to get the position you're after? I think it's actually to get to heaven. It's to be with Jesus for eternity. And it's the second most important thing, is to bring as many people on the journey with us. And everything else is a bonus. And I think that that's always helps me, because we're all, on this journey, and life doesn't always go the way that we want it to do. But I think when we do follow Jesus, and his grace is sufficient for us in that. And so I think that's really important, that we don't get too far away from those basics. And I love that, because I'm a pretty simple, basic guy, and every single one of us can actually just bring it back to what it's all about. And you watch, when you kind of put things into perspective, all the things that you thought was such a big deal slowly kind of, come into where they should be, which is not that big of a deal.
Okay, so let's touch on that. You talk about things that we think are a really big deal. What are those things that you've thought are a really big deal that you realize aren't?
Awesome.
I don't want anyone to judge me, so I'm not going to...
It's too late for that, man.
No, I think that, I don't know, probably the opinion of others, for me, would be like one of the biggest struggles, is trying to please people. And you can compromise who you are and the decisions you make because you want that approval, because it's so instant and it's amazing. But it actually doesn't really matter what people think about you. It's awesome if people like you, but I guarantee if you are going after the approval of God and being obedient to who he is calling, the way that he's calling us to live, I guarantee everyone will love you, because it's the best way to live. And I think it's the most attractive thing, someone who has the presence of God over their lives and their character lives out that way.
Yeah. I'm noticing with so many of you answering questions, what's coming out is, I thought this, I felt this, but I went to the Word, or God revealed this to me and God said this to me. So I would love, Dave, if you could talk a little bit about, for you, why and how important your own personal devotion is in how all of this plays out. Because for all of us, you know, on this team, leaders, and all the other places watching, I guess, yeah, what the importance of that is.
Yeah, I mean, like the word that comes to my mind straight away is like intimacy, right? And I could use like that pastor's, preacher's cliche, like, you know, it means in to me, see, right?
Never heard that.
I've heard it so
That
many
is
times. It's
powerful.
been
But
really
I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah, thank you.
I saw it coming.
Yep.
Never heard that.
But this is where I think I got caught up a few years ago. I was leading worship on team, on staff, and I found myself in a really bad season. I came to the revelation that all of this wasn't to try and convince God to move in my life. This is meant to be a spectacle of our love and gratitude for Him. And on top of what He already wants to do, He sees that our hearts are positioned right. And so therefore, He does amazing and incredible things beyond what we imagine. I think on the other side of that is a real relationship with Him. And like, I have some of the weirdest conversations with God.
Me too.
Thank you. Because this can't be a tick of the box, read this much of the Bible every day, pray this much, pray about this, this, and this. And, you know, if someone's sick and you don't pray for them, you're not a good Christian. It has to be real for me, or else I'll be back at square one, not in a good place, feeling like I'm just faking it. And seriously, like, having kids is the best analogy, because I have intimacy with my wife, and we've got these kids that are looking up to us. And as leaders in your sphere, wherever you are, you could not be working for church, you could be in another completely different sphere of life in terms of how you lead people. But the people that are looking up to you are looking to you and wanting the real thing. People actually don't want to be impressed by you. People just want the real thing. And so for me, the biggest challenge is like, cool, haven't been reading my Bible as much, but am I being authentic and real before God? And then as you spend time with Him in an authentic place, just like, it's so funny. I find myself hanging out with Jad, and after about 2 hours, I start laughing like Jad. It's the most annoying thing ever, because he has this contagious laugh, right? Yeah, and it's the same with God. But I'm not looking into Jad's eyes going, I just want to laugh like you. I just want to laugh, you know?
It only happened once or twice.
It got weird, and so I had to like use another method. And I feel like a real relationship with God is just going, I just want to be in your presence. I just want to spend time with you. I don't have it all together. I don't feel like reading my Bible today, God, but could you speak to me anyway? And then as you spend more time with someone, you become like them, or they start to rub off on you. And I feel like that is like a good picture of what devotion means to me.
Autumn. Orts, I would love to hear from you on this as well, about how you keep it fresh in the day in and the day out, in what can easily just become just a cycle of days or weeks, like how you keep that walk with God in an authentic place, like Dave says.
Everything Dave said was amazing. Hold on. In my first year of college, Amanda Ferguson, I don't know if anyone's had Amanda Ferguson, she spoke about the Psalms, and she talked about the Psalms of lament. And I'm actually a funny person, so don't judge me for this. But she talked about how one of the most impacting Psalms, often we reference the Psalms for Psalms of praise, right? We can all recite Psalm 100 or Psalm 150, the one that says praise Him in every verse. And she said, one of the most important Psalms is not the Psalm of praise, it's the Psalm of lament. And she said the reason why is because when the Jews felt completely abandoned, they still continued to speak to God. And I remember being so moved by that, going, God's okay if I'm angry at Him. God's okay if I'm hurt. God's okay if I'm disappointed. I actually just have to keep talking to Him. And my authenticity with God is not being fake. Sometimes it's actually getting in my car being angry at him, putting on Carrie Job, and then being like, oh, just kidding, God, that's a really nice song. Love ya.
I like that you put on Carrie Job when everyone else puts on Metallica when they're angry at God.
But everything that Dave said, and but one of the things for me is to keep talking, is to always keep communication open. And the second that I keep talking, my heart stays soft.
Can I ask the follow-up question, which is exactly about your heart staying soft? I feel like of anyone I know, you talk a lot about guarding your heart. I feel like you have a real revelation about that being important. Why is it important? And even in our team, how do you actually guard your heart? How do you do that? And then how do you deal with your heart when it's not okay?
I don't know that there's a perfect answer. These guys could all probably answer it. Personally, I find that you have to look at yourself in perspective to keep your heart right. So often what you feel like doing isn't the right thing. You feel like, you might feel like you're overlooked, or you might, whatever it is in your sphere. And I find that I keep my heart right by going, what do I want to tell my kids about this moment? What do I want to tell my future generation about this moment in my life? And for me, that might sound weird, but for me, legacy keeps my heart in perspective.
Beautiful.
And because often in the moment, you kind of want to react. And then a couple of years ago, I had a moment where I said, I want to tell my kids, I want to teach my kids how to get through this. And so then I taught myself how to get through it, even though I don't have kids yet. Because then I went, I don't want to tell them that their mother gave up. I want to tell my kids, no, this is actually how you handle something different. And then what was the second part? I'm sorry.
How as team do we do that? How do we keep our heart soft?
I feel like you have to know your heart. You have to know when your heart isn't good. And if you think that your heart is always good, you're a fool.
Right, because the Bible says the heart's deceitful above all things, right?
Yes. So you have to be aware of your heart, and you have to know what to do when you're not okay. I feel like you have to know how to safeguard your own heart. When you're feeling vulnerable, when you're feeling hurt. One of the things that I think you guys have modeled really well is have leaders that are around you that are safe. So if you're feeling hurt, the worst thing that you can do is take it down and just spray it everywhere, or take it across. One of the things that you have to do is take it up. And so that's something that I try to practice, but I think Cass and Rich, you guys have modeled that really well, of being leaders that are safe. And I would just encourage anyone, if you feel like your heart isn't good, just be honest about it, and find leaders that you can trust and address it. And know that, this is the last thing, pain isn't always bad.
Right.
Sometimes we live in a pain-free society, we live in an instant society, and I've been through seasons where God is like, lean into the suffering. And I saw a meme about having a kid, being in labor, and the midwife said, push, honey, it's meant to hurt.
It hurts.
And I actually loved that. I actually love that, because sometimes we want fruit without pain. And we don't understand that God is actually doing things through the suffering and through the pain. And if we actually embrace it instead of running away from it, we'll find that there'll be amazing fruit in our lives.
I was going to say, I think with regard to guarding your heart, I feel like it's also a question of where we draw worth, significance, purpose, and from. Because worth, all that kind of stuff, significance, purpose, worth, that I believe is found, I guess, more in obedience to God than it is in the outworking of your gift.
Beautiful.
Here's the thing, the obedience part is between you and God, that can be trusted. The outworking is between us here and everybody else. I trust you, but you're not God, so you will hurt me. But if I place value in that, it's only a matter of time before that breaks down. So wisdom says, if I'm going to trust, if I'm going to place my worth and my heart in any area, it's going to be in my relationship with God. And so the trust factor, the worth, purpose, everything else, meaning, needs to come from here, which will give me the fortitude to be able to stand when this outworking here gotta go sideways, when my heart's threatened. I've got this foundation here. And I feel like if you got that, then I guess the storms will come. Not that it won't hurt, but when it does, there's enough in you to stand while the storm happens. Does that make sense? So,
I'm asking a leading question, but do you feel like you have to relearn that over and over and over and over? Or is it just me?
it's
just me.
Yeah, no. No, it's continual because it's grace to grace, strength to strength. I feel like you never learn these things and turn the page. The purpose of growing in faith is not that we develop an independence from God. I don't think we need to grow in the Word and everything else, so now we know enough to not need God. No. I think the more you discover God and the more you read the Word and actually develop a revelation, the more you discover how much more you need Him. Yeah. So this is ongoing, and the more you discover God, the more you discover you need Him more. So yes, you're right. It's step by step, and it's more every day, and it's repeat, and it's back on your knees today, and tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after.
I just wanted to highlight one thing you said as well about, I guess, in team or in church in general. Sometimes we look to leaders. I know I have, and I think so highly of them that I almost think that they're, that they can't do anything wrong, or that they won't hurt me, or that they won't make a decision different to what I think they might or should make. And I think that distinction of that our leaders, or even the greater church body, is not God. We represent Him, and we're His people on the earth, but we're not Him. And so keeping our relationship, like you said, keeping our relationship great with God, but also being aware that we're all sinful, we're all fallible, and we will hurt each other. But that's almost part of, we know that, that's part of the journey. And when we know that, and hopefully I can have grace for you, and you can have grace for me in that, because we know that that's part of why we're together. That's part of why we need Christ.
All right, so how is that not a cop-out for you, us, as pastors of this team and teams, taking responsibility for our team's well-being? How do you balance that, Gabe, with finding fits for people and their place and allowing them the opportunity to serve versus, I'm not God and I'm going to hurt you and it's not really my fault, deal with your stuff?
Before he answers...
Sorry.
This is perfect because I had no idea.
I'm just giving you a moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I think.
Keep going,
Not that you were saying that.
Sure. I think as a leader, or as a person in the team, or a person sitting in the pew in church, it can look one way, but take this with the spirit it's intended. You guys hurt us all the time. As in, it's two ways.
Yeah.
No. As in, it's not you become a leader and then you're all of a sudden just distant from the realities of life. Like, it pains me when stuff happens to our team, and when people choose not to follow Christ, or when they choose to opt out, or where they're just not living up to their potential. That actually hurts. And so I feel like it's not a cop-out to say we'll hurt you. I'm almost welcoming the honesty the other way as well. So I'm saying let's be real here both ways. When me as a leader, when I don't look after you the way I should, but then when you don't look after me the way I should, and we don't do this together the way we should, let's be honest about that. I guess that's what I'm saying. So I'm not trying to make an excuse for leadership. I'm just trying to say we're in this journey together. Right. And it happens that I'm doing this role and you're doing that role, so now let's do that together, even though we know each other will probably hurt each other along the way.
Great.
Sorry, guys.
Do you still want me to answer? I thought that was great, Rich. I thought you pretty much covered it. I think it's interesting when you're a leader in the team and you're in charge of putting people in positions or rostering or whatever else. It's so easy when you're the person receiving that to infer motive. It's so easy that, like, when you get put onto worship lead for the first time, you're like, this is the best. I've made it. They've recognized my gift. Then the next week you get put on choir at a different location and you go, unbelievable. How do they not see me? What did I do wrong? They hate me. I knew they hated me all along. They like the other person who's younger or cooler or like wears tighter jeans or whatever it might be, or wears cooler shoes. Like, it's so easy for us to get a rostered position and to just start making judgments that oftentimes support the basis we've already established. So it's so easy for those things to challenge our sense of identity, which comes back to what you said before about our sense of security and identity comes from our relationship with Christ, not from our place of service. I've served in so many different parts of our team. I've been rostered on putting out chairs. I used to put modesty blankets over people who had been prayed for. I've played drums. Yeah. It's a high honor, the modesty blanket. A lot of technique goes into that. It's not simple.
You were the original Simon Kobler.
I don't know what that means.
You used to tour with United and drum.
Yep. I was probably like this good compared to Cobes being this good, so I don't think he'd appreciate the reference, but I really do. But I think it's easy for you to see a position or to see you get asked to sing an item or do something at a conference, and you instantly you puff your chest out and you start to think that you're walking in this new level of authority. Your authority hasn't changed at all. Who you are hasn't changed at all. What you've been asked to do on this one occasion looks different to previous occasions. And if you have a strong understanding of who God's made you to be, and that is your driving force, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you get asked to put out the chairs or lead worship at the conference. It means that regardless of the position you hold, your security and your place in the team is still the same. It's easy to lose sight of that if you spend more time looking at your planning center rostered positions than you do reminding yourself of who you are in Christ. No, it's true. Because a lot of times, and Annie's about to ask a question to some of these guys, but a lot of times what you do on the team changes. It's changed for me. It's changed for all of us. JD once dressed up as a tea bag and got lowered into a teacup at a women's conference.
That's true.
It's looked different for everybody, and I think if you hold on to what was, you'll never have what is, and you'll definitely never get what's to come. You'll be stuck in the past.
I love that the Bible says, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought. And I love that actually, like on the couch, and then when I look at our leadership across our team, that often permeates the way that we relate to each other. And you'll often turn up at rehearsals and somebody will be getting coffees for everybody who is normally a worship leader or something. And there aren't positions or ranks of positions that determine your worth, but actually, if I get to serve, I'll buy all your coffees. I don't care. I don't think that it makes me less. I'll make all of you cups of tea. I will go out the back and do words. I don't, to be perfectly honest with you and in front of God, I'll do anything. I don't actually care. I feel like it's an honor that God would choose to use us in any way, shape, or form. I was that little kid that I think was annoying to every Sunday school teacher because I would want to put out the paper, I'd want to put out the chairs, I'd want to sing in the choir, I'd want to help mop up after baptisms. I pleaded to be in the Salty musical, and then I laboured to be the narrator because I know it was a boy role, but they should be giving girls equal rights. And I was that kid who, whatever church was doing, I wanted in. And I'm still that kid. I'm still like, if I get in, I'm there. If I get to come late at rehearsals and sit there and just watch you guys, maybe I'll do that too, just because it's fun and there's enjoyment in it. And I hope I teach my kids, like Orts was saying before, I hope I teach them to serve and to serve the house of God and to love it and to be able to be chess pieces, that God just moves into the position he needs at any point in time for any role, and I'll do every role unto the Lord. Because none of you control my destiny, and Brian doesn't control my destiny, the Lord does. And I'll answer to him for cups of water and for leading teams. And I think that is us. I think that's the story of us.
Yep.
That's there are things that define us. And I wondered maybe if you would all share one thing that you'd think defines us as a team. Because maybe in your stories, we actually form a picture of who we are. And as campuses come on board, like our friends in Bali and Portugal and South Africa and wherever else. Yeah. Where was that?
Vladivostok. I don't know if you heard, just got announced this afternoon.
Oh, fantastic. Well, awesome. Welcome to the family. But I think some of that helps us to create a sense of who we are and what we belong to. Starting with JD.
Awesome. I think, one of the big hearts of our team is that we serve the Lord with gladness. And I know for me that's a big revelation, and it comes across in, for those that saw the Vision Sunday presentation, I know it's got talked about lots, but it does, I get so pumped when I see signs that say, can you believe we get to do this? And it's and it's like the 5 a.m. call time, and it's really hard work. But I just think that sense of always seeing the bigger picture in what we do, and I think whatever it is that our hands finds to do, that we should do it unto the Lord, and we should do it. The Bible does say to serve the Lord with gladness and joy in our hearts, and I think that joy can be contagious. And anything that we do, it always is going to go back into making sure that people are presented with an opportunity to find who Jesus is and experience salvation, which will change the rest of their life and the rest of their family's life. And that is enough for me to be excited about whatever it is that we get to do.
Awesome. I'd say honor. I think honor is something that's defined our church and also this creative team in a couple of different regards. The first, obviously, is honoring God for his place on the throne. And I think we don't serve people, we serve Jesus. And I think if we always keep that straight, there's never a conflict. Because like what Rich was saying, people will always let you down. You could serve the most amazing leader, and at some point in their life, they will disappoint you. And so if there's a culture of honor, everything, and we have some of the most amazing leadership on our church team, can I just say? But if ultimately the reason we do what we do is for Jesus, you'll never go wrong, and you'll never be disappointed because your motivation will always be sound. The second way is we actually honor a cross. And we honor our colleagues, and we honor our, our workmates, and we're inclusive and embracive of other people. And the third thing you might not expect, but we actually honor the people that we lead, and we honor down. And if there's someone that's been entrusted to you, or a team that you lead, those are all people that you're meant to steward and push further than you and find the gold in them and manage them well. And so I would say that one of the things that differentiates our team is we honor up, we honor across, but we also actually honor the people that we lead.
Right.
I think fighting for unity is massive for people in general, believers in general, but I think for our team, I think in the Bible, in Psalms it says, God commands a blessing. How good and how pleasant when the people of God dwell together in unity. And it gets very descriptive about some dude named Aaron and his beard and stuff. But then ends up with that's where God commands a blessing, life eternal. Right. And we're made up of individuals, but what I love about this church is that, and we see it all over the world when we travel, is that you'll find that a lot of creative teams have a different end game and a different vision to the greater church that they belong to. And what I love is that we are so proud to say that our vision for this creative team, Cass and Rich's vision, is the vision of Brian and Bobby Houston, is the vision of Hillsong Church to reach and influence and impact in every sphere, And the Bible says that. It doesn't say that he's going to bless the best song, he's going to bless the best worship leader, he's going to bless the best communicator or the best person who puts out the seats. He says that he blesses unity. Yeah. That's where he commands life. That's where he commands things to grow. And I've been able to have the privilege of seeing that. Like that in our church, even this group of people, so different, even maybe in what we believe in terms of the detail. But we're able to put that aside and go, but we are united in one vision to reach and influence the world, to point people to Jesus. And God looks at that and says, that's what I'm going to bless. Beautiful. That's why Hillsong is blessed.
I think one really important kind of aspect of our team is the diversity within, and just the creativity that abides within that diversity is mind-blowing. And I thank God for that people are different. I thank God that people have been created differently, and they've been gifted differently, and they've been given, discreetly, like delicate and interesting gifts that separate yet still unite us all. And I think that's amazing. Like the people that we encounter every day and just discovering their creativity, and not just in a worship sense. I'm talking, creatively with screen, creatively with words, with whatever, with strategy. Like there are people that are just in our team, and I think if you're not from our team, or if you're kind of watching on from somewhere else, if you go looking for just the creativity in the diversity, your mind will be blown.
Yeah.
I would say servant leadership. I think we often talk about and hear about, even in the world, in business, leadership, it's all about leadership. But I think the thing that sets us apart is that absolutely there's a need for leadership, but it's all about serving people and loving people, and they are very much connected. So everything that we do, whether it's on the platform, off the platform, the stuff nobody sees, it's servanthood. We're serving people because we love them, and because Jesus was the greatest example of a servant, and a servant who led. So that's mine.
Would probably talk about integrity and creative integrity. The thing I love about all these guys up here and so many of the people that are in this room tonight is that you're the same person on the platform and off the platform. You don't have a public persona and a private persona. You're exactly who you are at all times. And when I say creative integrity, I mean that you create not for the sake of a platform, but because you can't do anything else. Like God's given you this gift, and you feel like that if you're not playing, writing, dancing, dreaming, like sculpting, whatever it might be, you feel like you're not yourself. Like when you talked earlier, it's about you just had to find your way to the piano, and when you found your way to the piano, that's where you felt peace. It's where you felt the presence of God. I pray that I always continue to create like I breathe, like continue to draw in new breath, continue to expose myself to new things, continue to push myself, that my revelation of creativity yesterday isn't the same as it is today, and that tomorrow looks different again. Because that's the way God creates. He is constantly creating over and over again new and new things. And if I'm created in His image, I should be doing that too. So I want to be the same person day in, day out, but I also want to be a different person day in, day out, in the exact same breath.
I think for me, it's the why. I think the what, how, when, where, that's always shifting. The why never does. I think I don't know, especially in the realm of our team that I'm involved in, it's constantly shifting. You need to keep up with it. But the one thing that will always be for 30 years, has been, and probably will be for the next 30 years, is why we do this. And the reality is, we do this to connect people, lost people, to a lost and dying world, to a Savior who came 2,000 plus years ago, to save them from their sins and give them life. That's why we do it. In all the conversations we have about this, that, and everything else, and all the technical conversations and all the practical conversations, all that changes. But why we do it never has, never will.
Love it.
Sorry? Cass is whispering in my ear sweet nothings. It's pretty inappropriate timing.
Yep.
Not really. Wow.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate Mush, who was sat next to these two this whole time with such grace?
Anyways, sorry, I'm in trouble recovering from that. I think that Jesus talks about going, if someone asks you to go 1 mile, that you should go the 2nd mile. And I like to think of our team, and I like to think of us, I guess, as Christians, that we would outwork that we would be that we would live on the 2nd mile. There's lots to be done. There's people that need to be connected with Jesus, and I think if we stay on just what's the easy and what's asked of us, then we won't do what actually God would have us do, and we won't achieve all God would have us do. And I think He's given us the responsibility of living now and having so much in our hand, so much opportunity to win the lost, so much. So I guess it's probably easier for us to get out in front of people like never before. And I feel like if we just keep it safe, play it safe, just do the minimum, we won't do actually what we're called to do. So second mile people.
Awesome. Mine's that we're a team that's evolving, which might be a little bit controversial because I think that we pride ourselves on knowing who we are. And I think that as we have journeyed as a team and as we've gone from one campus to two and two to three and 3 to 28 and 28 to global and global to beyond, I think what we actually know of ourselves actually morphs a little bit. And we've got to be okay with that. So like for example, we used to say when the guys went out, home surprise. When you come home, you get off the plane and you get on the platform at 6 a.m. in the morning, and that is a sign of your loyalty and your love for church. But I think now, home goes with us. And so when these guys go out as United or Hillsong Worship or Young and Free, they're taking home out, and they're already loyal. They're already committed to building what we're building. When we make albums and everybody plays the album arrangement in church, I'm all up for it, I love it. But actually our core value is about connecting people with God and about creating worship that is meaningful. And so if you live in an extension service and you're doing the big Let There Be Light arrangements and there's the flashing lights and it's all incredible and the guitar solo's there and Nigel's down the front in your campus and you're like tearing it up, I'd go, what are you doing? Like the aim of this was actually to connect people to Jesus, and maybe we fail at the things that we held dear. So maybe part of our evolving as a team is going, hold on, what's it going to take to create arrangements that connect people with God? Yeah. Maybe our evolving is actually screens and stage design, and we never used to do that before. But just because we haven't done things before doesn't mean that it's not Hillsong or it's not our way. Yeah. Our way actually, the core values are connecting people to God. The core values are the things that you guys have talked about, and the practical outworking of them for me is Serve the Lord with Gladness looks like Danabelle Whippy at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning creating life and party in the control room in TV. And then, guys, I'm going to do really good at it, honouring people and unity. I feel like they go hand in hand because they look like speaking well of each other and actually having each other's back and not going, oh, did you see what Nigel did this morning? I wouldn't have done that, but, that's Nige. Or, I feel like there's so many of those little conversations that happen, right? And it's real easy to play comparison games, but if we're committed to unity, that actually isn't about comparing ourselves amongst ourselves. It's about championing each other and loving when other people succeed. My greatest highlight in team is actually when you guys get a go at what you're good at and actually watching you win. But then that means that you've got to create space for people, and that's hard. So some of you have to actually step out of the way to let other people come through because you had a turn. And maybe that's okay. I feel like when Jad was talking about diversity. I love looking across the front of our platforms in all of our churches, and you see different ages, different ethnic groups, different everything. And there's a diversity in race, colour and age, but there's such a diversity in what you can take in your hand and where you can put it. So some of you might not like dance. That's fine. Some of you love dance, and that's awesome. And in our church, there's place for all of that.
Yeah. And it should look different in every one of those places.
Right.
Like we've put in a lot of effort to make sure that each campus, each location, and Jad can probably speak better to this than I can, takes on a life of its own, takes on a feel of its own, actually starts to belong to the people who shape it every day, rather than watching a DVD and thinking that's the goal. Like you say, the goal is to connect people to Jesus on the regular. Right. Is there anything you want to add to that? This is probably the last thing we get to talk about.
I think we hear a lot about the Hillsong way, or we talk a lot about the Hillsong way. I would pray that the Hillsong way would be that we can adapt. And we would change the method, and we would see this vehicle for what it is, and it's to serve what we all have been talking about, is helping people connect with Jesus, helping people to live a life connected with Christ, flourishing, all of that. So I would pray that the Hillsong way would be to adapt.
Lovely.
And not be afraid to change the model, change the method, to absolutely maximize the potential of the message.
Yeah. Unreal. Awesome. Love it.
Anyone want to add to that?
Can I say one thing? I'm surprised this word hasn't come up yet, but excellence. So often around the world, we're known for excellence. And just in line with what Jad has said and what Cass is saying, there's a myth that excellence is perfection. I'm not perfect. Believe it or not, Nigel Hindroff. He's very close. but he's not perfect.
When did Nige become the guy for this?
Because he's sitting on the front row. And
he's pretending
awesome.
to hate it, but really.
It's because Nige is awesome. He actually is amazing. But if I could just say one thing is excellence is your best all the time. And because it's your best all the time, you should learn something today to where tomorrow your best is a little bit better. And so then our best is progressive. And so like Jad was saying, adapting, hopefully where I'm at right now, 12 months from now, my best is better. And so if you keep in mind, excellence is not perfection. Excellence is your progressive best.
Great.
Yeah, that was good. You should definitely clap for it. We've sort of talked about this a little bit, kind of alluded to it, but we always talk about this being a generational team. And here at all of our campuses, we're all about, that sounds very beautiful, but I guess I'm wondering, what does that look like? Because it sounds beautiful. Yeah, we're a generational team. Why is that important that the next generation would come through? And what does it actually look like? Because it sounds beautiful, but it might mean getting out of the way.
Yeah.
Might ask you, Cass.
Is it Joshua that says that one generation forgot to declare the works of the Lord to the next, and there grew up in Israel a generation that didn't know God? I feel like if we take that to heart, then as a creative team, we've got a responsibility to actually allow space for the next generation to come up and declare the praises of God like you got to, or the people before you got to. I think it's really hard. I think in our church, we are always about looking at the next generation and who's coming through, not because we don't think you can be older on our platform, but actually because we believe we're called to steward that generation, because we're called to actually make sure that the generation coming behind us declares the praises of God. And the best way that we can do it is actually to let them in, to let them have a go. In Queensland a little while back, we were there on a Friday night. I think I've shared this story before, but came to the end of worship and Brad Corring was there and he's leading, and we went, get her up. And there's a little girl, 15, Melody Morstan. She's great. She loves God. She's real committed. She's probably younger at that point in time. And we went, let her lead the last song. Like, what does it matter? And so she gets up, and we think she's actually just going to stand on a microphone and kind of help lead, right? And she sees the moment. And she walks straight to the front and is confident as all get out, encourages the church and goes, stand up, let's worship, let's go out with praise, let's have the best way. She's encouraging the church because she's watched week after week after week after week. And finally, she gets a go, and she absolutely killed leading worship that night. But she walked off the platform and she went, I'm ruined for anything else. I found what I want to do. And I go, if we can create opportunities for 15-year-olds and 13-year-olds and 12-year-olds to actually find their place in the story of God, then maybe as they get older and life gets harder, they're not going to depart from it because they found fulfillment in serving. And if you are so precious about your opportunity, your moment, your time, you will fail to bring through that generation. And I think the commission to our creative team, whether you have been here for a week or you've been here for 20 years, is to find the people who are coming behind you, actually to mentor people and grab them and encourage them and compel them to follow Christ, compel them to create because they can, and then actually champion them. And I think if we do that together, we create such a sweet team. And then if you are older, then I'm going to challenge you that if you feel like your time on platform's done, and for some of you, that's a very, very hard place to get to. Or if you actually think that's what the Lord's asking from you, then don't opt out a team. Actually become the greatest coaches that our team have ever had. I love Steve McPherson because he was one of our key worship leaders. And as he's progressed, he's gone, do you know what? I'm actually just going to take a different role. I'm going to champion people. I'm going to run marriage enrichment. I'm going to spur you on. I'm going to tell you how great you are. I'm going to encourage you to become all that God's got for you. I'm going to talk well about people. I'm going to find the songs that are sitting in this room. And he actually has just transferred into a different role, but he is one of the biggest encouragers of our team. And I think that if we create a generational model, then we have older and younger and middle age and everybody, we coexist together, and we're team because we choose to belong together first, not because we have a function, and then we champion each other because we can.
I love that.
The end.